Picture this. It's 2 in the morning, pitch black outside, and you hear something that doesn't belong. Maybe it's footsteps on gravel where no one should be walking. Maybe it's your dog giving that low, serious growl that makes your blood run cold. In that moment, everything changes. The comfortable safety of your home suddenly feels vulnerable, and you realize that when the sun goes down, you're playing by completely different rules. Most people think home security is just about locks and cameras, but the truth is, nighttime defense is a whole different game that requires a completely different mindset and skill set. Tonight, I'm going to walk you through a comprehensive system for dominating the darkness around your property. We're talking about turning your dog into a precision early warning system, using light as both a weapon and a shield, moving through shadows like they're your personal highway, and creating a perimeter that gives you every possible advantage when someone decides to test your defenses. This isn't about being paranoid or living in fear. This is about being prepared, being smart, and taking control of your environment when visibility drops to zero. If you're serious about protecting what matters most to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now, because we're diving deep into tactics that could literally save your life. Pick up my new book before it all falls apart, The Emergency Prep Manual for the Real World, available on Amazon. Link is in the description. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Your dog isn't just a pet when it comes to nighttime security. It's potentially your most valuable piece of equipment. But here's the thing, most people get wrong. They think any dog can be a good guard dog, and they treat their security dog the same way they treat their family pet. That's a mistake that could cost you everything. When we're talking about canine assets for nighttime defense, we need to think like we're selecting a tool for a specific job, not choosing a companion for movie nights on the couch. The first thing you need to understand is that there are different types of working dogs for different types of jobs. And mixing up these roles is where most people go wrong. You've got your alert dogs, which are like your early warning radar system. These are breeds like German Shepherds, Dutch Shepherds, and Belgian Malinois from working lines, not show lines. Their job isn't to attack anyone, it's to detect and notify. They've got incredible senses, they're naturally suspicious of strangers, and they can tell you about a threat long before you'd ever know it was there. Then you've got your guardian dogs, which are your heavy hitters. We're talking about breeds like Cane Corsos, Presa Canarios, and Caucasian Shepherds. These are big, powerful animals with serious protective instincts, and their job is deterrence first, physical engagement as an absolute last resort. The ideal setup is actually a 2-dog system where you've got one alert dog and one guardian dog working together, giving you both early warning and a credible deterrent that makes most smart criminals decide your house isn't worth the trouble. But no matter what type of dog you choose, there are some non-negotiable traits you need to look for. Environmental stability means the dog doesn't freak out when it hears thunder, car engines, or sudden loud noises. Handler focus means the dog pays attention to you first, not every squirrel that runs across the yard. Defensive drive, not prey drive, means the dog protects its territory instead of chasing after anything that moves. And controlled aggression means the dog can turn its protective instincts on and off based on your commands, which is absolutely critical for everyone's safety. Now, here's where it gets tactical. You don't just put your dog in the backyard and hope for the best. You need to create what I call zones of canine influence, and each zone serves a specific purpose. Zone 1 is your scent perimeter, which is basically a psychological barrier created by your dog's natural scent markers. You collect your dog's urine and strategically place small amounts at key points around your property boundary, especially downwind locations and natural movement channels. This serves 2 purposes. It warns off animal predators, and it creates a baseline scent signature that makes any human or animal intruder stand out like a neon sign to your dog's nose. Zone 2 is your observation and alert zone, where you position your dog to maximize its sensory coverage. This means elevated positions when possible because sound travels better to and from higher ground. Acoustic channels that naturally amplify sound, like the space between 2 buildings, and run-line systems that let your dog patrol a significant area instead of being stuck in one spot. Zone 3 is your sanctuary and engagement zone, which is usually a fenced yard or inside your home where your dog can work off-leash and serve as your final line of defense. This is where your dog transitions from pure detection to active protection, positioning itself between you and any threat that makes it to your doorstep. But having a great dog positioned in the right places isn't enough if you don't know how to work with that dog as a team. You can actually train your dog to give you different types of alerts for different types of threats. A single low woof for a distant, unconfirmed contact. A steady, medium volume bark for a confirmed but non-threatening presence like a deer. A rapid, high volume, aggressive bark for a confirmed human approach or immediate threat. This takes time and consistent training, but when it works, it's like having a sophisticated alarm system that can think and make decisions. You also need to think about feeding strategy for peak nighttime alertness. Most people feed their dogs in the morning and evening, which creates a post-meal energy crash right when you need them most alert. Instead, shift the main meal to late afternoon around 4 or 5 o'clock. This timing ensures your dog's digestive process is complete by full darkness, leaving them with maximum energy and heightened senses during that critical midnight to 4 a.m. window when most threats use the cover of darkness. High protein, moderate fat, low carb nutrition supports sustained energy better than typical high carb kibble. And making sure your dog has a final bathroom break before posting them for the night eliminates distractions that could compromise their focus. The last piece of the puzzle is understanding how smart criminals might try to neutralize your canine asset and having countermeasures ready. Food-based attacks using drugged or poisoned bait are common, which is why poison-proofing training is absolutely critical. Your dog needs to learn that the only safe food comes from you in their designated bowl, period. This means extensive training where you teach them to ignore even the most tempting treats when they're found on the ground or offered by strangers. Olfactory distractions like using a female in heat to distract a male guard dog can be countered by neutering male security dogs, which removes the biological drive and makes them more handler-focused. Direct elimination from a distance with suppressed weapons can be countered by strategic positioning that uses terrain, structures, and vegetation to create cover for your dog, forcing any attacker to enter your territory to engage directly instead of picking them off from a standoff position. Most people think about flashlights in terms of how bright they are. But when it comes to tactical lighting for nighttime defense, brightness is just one piece of a much more complex puzzle. The truth is, improper use of light can get you killed faster than having no light at all, because every time you turn on a light, you're potentially giving away your position, destroying your night vision, and providing an adversary with a perfect point of aim. But when you understand light discipline and use illumination tools correctly, light becomes both a weapon and a shield that can give you total dominance in low-light situations. The first thing you need to understand is that lumens, which is what most people focus on when buying flashlights, isn't nearly as important as candela when it comes to tactical applications. Lumens measure total light output, but candela measures beam intensity, and intensity is what actually matters for threat detection and neutralization at distance. A high candela light with moderate lumens will outperform a high lumen, low candela light every single time for spotting and identifying threats beyond 50 yards. This is why you need a tiered illumination system instead of just one flashlight that you try to use for everything. Tier 1 is your long-range spotter light, which needs high candela output, 50,000 or more, to punch through darkness and identify threats at extended ranges. This is your primary threat detection tool, and it doesn't need to be super high in lumens because its job is creating an intense, focused beam that can reach out and illuminate a specific target or area. Tier 2 is your mid-range general-purpose light, which includes headlamps and weapon-mounted lights that need a balance of lumens and candela to provide both a useful hotspot and significant spill light for navigation and hands-free tasks. Your headlamp absolutely must have a direct-to-red mode for preserving night vision, and any weapon-mounted light must be recoil-rated with intuitive switching that gives you instant access to maximum output or strobe mode. Tier 3 is your close-range admin light for reading, checking gear, or medical tasks, and this needs to have sub-lumen or very low output modes, preferably with red light options. Power source logistics matter more than most people realize because when your lights die, your tactical advantage disappears instantly. Standardize on 18650 or 21700 lithium-ion cells whenever possible, but keep CR123A batteries as backup. Maintain a robust charging system and a deep supply of charged cells, and practice strict battery discipline by labeling and rotating your stock so you're always using the oldest batteries first. But having the right lights is worthless if you don't understand the tactical principles that keep you alive while using them. The most important concept is light and move doctrine, which means you never activate a light from a position you intend to hold. You flash the light to gather information, immediately deactivate it, and move to a new concealed position before any return fire can be directed at your previous location. Advanced scanning techniques can multiply your effectiveness while minimizing your exposure. Strobing or flickering involves brief, rapid flashes while sweeping an area to get snapshots of information without providing a steady target. Bounce lighting means aiming your hotspot at a nearby ceiling or wall to illuminate an area with soft, indirect light, without exposing your actual position. Painting with the spill means using the weaker edge of your beam to subtly illuminate a target area instead of hitting it with your full hotspot. When it comes to offensive applications, light becomes a weapon through the photonic barrier technique, which uses a high candela light in tactical strobe mode aimed directly at an adversary's eyes to overwhelm their vision and disrupt their decision-making process. Backlighting and silhouette creation involves placing a light source behind a threat to turn them into a dark silhouette against a bright background, giving you a perfect target while you remain concealed in darkness. You can coordinate your lighting with your canine asset by using your dog's directional bark as a vector for a brief, targeted flash to confirm the threat without revealing your exact position. For those with access to night vision devices, infrared illumination opens up a whole new level of tactical capability. IR illuminators emit light that's invisible to the naked eye, but brightly illuminates everything when viewed through night vision, allowing for navigation, target identification, and aiming in complete darkness without any visible signature. IR lasers project an aiming point that's only visible through night vision devices, enabling precise shooting without traditional sights or visible lasers that would betray your position. IR strobes serve as identification beacons that let team members track each other without emitting any visible light. The key to integrating IR into your defensive plan is understanding that it gives you the ability to observe and engage threats that have no idea they're being watched. But you have to maintain proper IR light discipline, just like with white light, because an adversary with night vision capabilities can detect your IR emissions just as easily as you can detect theirs. Counter-IR considerations become critical if you're facing sophisticated opposition, because IR decoys using cheap battery-powered LEDs can draw an enemy's attention to false positions while you observe and engage from elsewhere. Shadows aren't just the absence of light, they're tactical assets that can provide concealment, channel movement, and mask your intentions when you know how to use them correctly. But most people think shadows work like they do in video games, where you step into a dark area and become invisible. Real-world shadow work is much more complex and requires understanding shadow dynamics, movement principles, and how modern technology like thermal imaging has changed the game completely. The first step in exploiting shadows is mapping your nocturnal landscape before you actually need to use it. During daylight hours, you need to survey and identify all ambient light sources around your property and understand the static shadows they create at night. Street lights, porch lights, security lights, and even distant commercial lighting all create predictable shadow patterns that you can learn to use to your advantage. You're looking for what I call deep black zones, which are areas of complete darkness, and gray zones, which have partial illumination that can provide concealment while still allowing limited visibility. But shadows aren't static. They change throughout the night based on the moon phase, cloud cover, and even passing vehicles. So you need to understand these dynamic changes and how to use them. Cloud cover moving across the moon creates shifting shadow patterns that can mask your own movement if you time it right. And even the headlights of passing cars can temporarily create new shadows that provide concealment opportunities. When it comes to moving through shadows, there are specific techniques that separate skilled operators from amateurs. Shadow hopping involves moving quickly between pockets of deep shadow, pausing in each position to listen and observe before making the next move. This technique requires pre-planning your route and identifying safe positions before you start moving. Silhouette and shape discipline means avoiding skylining yourself against lighter backgrounds and standing next to objects that break up your human outline. The irregular edges of shadows created by foliage provide better camouflage than the hard geometric lines created by buildings because they mimic natural patterns that the human eye has trouble distinguishing. But remember that shadows only provide visual concealment. They don't hide sound or scent, so you still need to maintain strict auditory discipline and be mindful of wind direction when moving through them. The offensive applications of shadow work can turn darkness into a weapon against anyone who threatens your property. Creating fatal funnels involves using stationary lighting to brightly illuminate a choke point while you occupy an adjacent deep shadow, forcing any intruder into the light where they're exposed and blinded while you remain concealed. Shadow traps involve placing obstacles, tripwires, or auditory alerts like gravel or cans within obvious pockets of darkness, where an adversary will instinctively seek cover. Deceptive illumination uses weak, unattended decoy lights to create predictable shadow patterns, then positions you in a different, unexpected shadow that provides clear observation of the decoy area. But here's where things get really serious. Thermal imaging technology has fundamentally changed shadow tactics because thermal imagers don't see light. They detect heat signatures. A warm human body shows up as a bright shape against the cool, nighttime environment regardless of how deep the shadows are, which means traditional camouflage and shadow concealment become almost useless against this technology. Understanding thermal imaging capabilities is critical for modern defensive planning because thermal imagers are becoming more accessible and affordable every year. These devices can't see through solid objects that block heat transfer, so the most effective counter-thermal technique is getting behind barriers that provide thermal concealment. Earth berms, concrete walls, thick wood construction, and multiple layers of solid materials are your best protection, while glass, thin metal, and standard fabric provide little to no thermal concealment. Emergency space blankets with the reflective side facing out can provide temporary thermal concealment by reflecting the ambient temperature back at the imager instead of your body heat. But they're noisy, fragile, and create an unnatural shape that can still give you away. Specialized thermal ponchos and tarps designed specifically for military applications provide superior thermal concealment, but they're expensive and not widely available. Environmental masking techniques involve using weather conditions and heat sources to your advantage. Moving immediately after a rainstorm when everything is wet creates evaporative cooling that provides a chaotic thermal background, and positioning yourself downwind from heat sources like generators or recently parked vehicles can help mask or distort your thermal signature. In low-light conditions, your ears become more important than your eyes, and controlling sound becomes just as critical as controlling light. The problem is that most people have never learned to really listen to their environment or understand how sound travels and behaves at night, and they definitely don't know how to move silently or use sound as a tactical tool. Mastering auditory security means learning to establish an acoustic baseline, maintaining personal noise discipline, amplifying adversary sound signatures, and even using acoustic deception to manipulate threats. The foundation of sound security is establishing what I call your nocturnal acoustic baseline, which is simply learning the normal, ambient sounds of your environment at night so that any anomaly immediately stands out as a potential threat indicator. This requires spending several nights just listening from various positions around your property, using a notepad or voice recorder to log recurring sounds and their sources. You'll discover patterns you never noticed before: the hum of distant highway traffic, the cycling of neighbors' HVAC units, specific insect and animal calls, the creaking of trees in the wind, and how all these sounds change with weather conditions and time of night. Once you've mapped these normal sounds, an unfamiliar noise like a metallic click, a muffled cough, or footsteps on gravel, where there shouldn't be any, will instantly grab your attention as a potential threat. Personal noise discipline is about moving with absolute auditory stealth, and it starts with what I call the shakedown test. Get fully equipped with all your defensive gear, stand in a quiet room, and perform a series of movements like jumping jacks, squats, and quick turns. Every single source of noise needs to be identified and eliminated. Zipper pulls tapping against fabric, keys jingling, tools shifting in pouches, or gear rattling together. Use tape, ranger bands, or fabric wraps to secure and silence everything you carry. Footwear modification is critical because heavy, hard-soled boots are incredibly loud on most surfaces, so consider softer-soled options like military jungle boots, minimalist trail runners, or even moccasins for extreme stealth situations. The heel-to-toe walking technique that most people use is completely wrong for stealth movement. Instead, practice rolling your foot from the outside edge to the inside to minimize impact and surface disturbance. Environmental modification means proactively creating silent pathways on your property for your own use by clearing roots of dry leaves, twigs, and loose rocks. while purposefully leaving these noise-making materials in channels where you expect an adversary to travel. Amplifying adversary sound signatures turns the environment against anyone who doesn't belong on your property. Acoustic traps like beds of gravel, crushed rock, or dry leaves placed in strategic choke points force intruders to make noise that confirms their presence and location. Passive amplification uses landscape features to collect and focus sound, like positioning yourself at the top of a natural bowl or valley to catch sounds from below, or next to long, solid walls that act as acoustic reflectors. Active amplification through electronic means includes directional or parabolic microphones for long-distance listening from a static observation post, and networked remote microphones placed at key perimeter locations that feed back to a central listening station for continuous auditory surveillance of multiple sectors. Pick up my new book, Before It All Falls Apart, The Emergency Prep Manual for the Real World, available on Amazon. Link is in the description. Acoustic deception takes sound security to the offensive level by using audio to manipulate an adversary's perception and behavior. Diversion techniques use remote, battery-powered speakers to play pre-recorded sounds like car doors slamming or voices talking in locations far from your actual position, drawing attention away while you move or observe undetected. Masking involves performing noisy actions during periods of natural or artificial sound cover like high winds, rainstorms, or passing vehicles, or creating your own sound cover with continuous, looping industrial noise played on remote speakers. Baiting uses specific sounds to lure an adversary into a prepared engagement area, like playing the sound of someone coughing or gear being dropped, to suggest a vulnerable, unaware target that draws the intruder toward your chosen kill zone. Everything we've talked about tonight only works when you integrate these individual components into a single, cohesive defensive system where your canine assets, lighting techniques, shadow work, and sound security all work together to give you overwhelming tactical advantage. The key is understanding that this isn't just about having the right gear or knowing the right techniques. It's about developing a complete defensive mindset and creating standard operating procedures that you can execute flawlessly, even when you're operating on pure adrenaline in the middle of the night. Let me walk you through how this integration works in practice with a realistic scenario that shows how all these elements come together. It's 1:30 in the morning and your alert dog gives you that single low woof that means possible contact at distance. You don't immediately grab a flashlight and start shining it around like most people would do, because that would destroy your night vision and potentially give away your position. Instead, you move to your pre-planned observation position using the silent pathways you've already established, staying in the deep shadows while your eyes adjust to the darkness. Your dog's body language and the direction of its attention gives you a vector to focus your own senses, and you use passive listening techniques to try to identify what triggered the alert. After 30 seconds of observation, your dog transitions to its steady, medium-volume bark, which tells you there's definitely something out there, but it might not be a human threat. This is when you deploy your high candela spotter light using the light and move technique, giving a brief flash in the direction your dog is indicating, then immediately moving to a different shadow position. The flash reveals a deer moving along your property boundary, but more importantly, it confirms that your dog's alert system is working correctly and that your own response procedures are solid. But let's say the scenario develops differently. Your dog goes straight to rapid, high-volume, aggressive barking, which means confirmed human presence and immediate threat. Now you're implementing your full defensive protocol. You move to your primary defensive position, which provides cover from observation and clear fields of fire toward the most likely avenues of approach. You're using your night vision capabilities or passive observation techniques to track the threat's movement, while your dog's barking provides continuous updates on their location. Your lighting strategy shifts to offensive applications using backlighting or the photonic barrier technique to blind and disorient the intruder while maintaining your own concealment. Your acoustic traps are channeling the threat's movement and forcing them to make noise that confirms their exact position, while your own noise discipline keeps them from pinpointing your location. This integration extends to your physical preparation and gear staging as well. Every night before posting your canine and settling in for sleep, you run through a standardized readiness checklist that ensures all your tools are functional, your dog is properly positioned, your perimeter alerts are active, and your defensive gear is staged for immediate access. You practice alert response drills regularly, rehearsing your response to different types of alerts until the movements become automatic muscle memory. Most importantly, you conduct these drills in near total darkness without using white light, because familiarity with your terrain in low-light conditions is what separates survivors from victims. The psychological component of this integrated system is just as important as the technical aspects. When you've properly prepared your defenses and practiced your responses, you develop what military personnel call tactical confidence, which is the calm certainty that you can handle whatever situation develops. This confidence affects your decision-making, your physical performance, and even your stress response during actual threatening situations. An unprepared person facing a nighttime threat experiences panic and makes poor decisions, while a prepared person with an integrated defensive system experiences controlled aggression and tactical thinking. But integration also means understanding the limitations and potential failure points of your system so you can develop contingencies and backup plans. Your dog might be neutralized by a sophisticated adversary, your lighting tools might fail, your power might be out, or weather conditions might compromise your normal tactics. Each component of your defensive system needs backup options, and you need to train for degraded situations where you're operating with limited capabilities. This is why the fundamentals of movement, observation, and decision-making are more important than any specific piece of gear or technology. The difference between someone who talks about home defense and someone who's actually prepared for nighttime threats comes down to systems thinking and consistent preparation. Everything I've shared with you tonight isn't theoretical, it's practical knowledge that works in the real world when your life or your family's safety is on the line. The canine integration techniques, the tactical lighting principles, the shadow work, and the sound security measures only become effective when you commit to learning them, practicing them, and integrating them into a complete defensive mindset. Most people will watch this video, think it's interesting information, and then go back to relying on luck and hoping that nothing bad ever happens to them. But you're different, or you wouldn't have watched this far. You understand that hope isn't a strategy, and that real security comes from knowledge, preparation, and the willingness to take responsibility for your own protection. The nighttime environment doesn't have to be something that makes you feel vulnerable and afraid. When you understand how to work with darkness instead of fighting against it, when you know how to use your dog as a precision early warning system, when you can move through shadows like you own them, and when you can control light and sound to your advantage, darkness becomes your ally instead of your enemy. But knowledge without action is worthless. So, here's what you need to do right now. Start with your dog if you have one, and begin the basic alert conditioning that turns them from a pet into a security asset. If you don't have a dog, start researching the breeds and temperament traits that match your specific situation and security needs. Begin mapping the light sources and shadow patterns around your property so you understand your nighttime tactical environment. Practice moving silently through your own home and yard until you can navigate in complete darkness without making noise. Most importantly, develop the mindset that your security is your responsibility, and that being prepared isn't paranoia, it's wisdom. Pick up my new book, Before It All Falls Apart, the Emergency Prep Manual for the Real World, available on Amazon. Link is in the description. This has everything you need to know about preparing for uncertain times, and it goes way beyond just nighttime defense to cover every aspect of emergency preparedness. If this video opened your eyes to how much you don't know about protecting yourself and your family, that book will give you the complete foundation you need to build real security and resilience. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're going to keep diving deep into the skills and knowledge that could save your life when everything else fails. The world is becoming more unpredictable every day, but you don't have to be a victim of circumstances when you have the right knowledge and the right mindset. Take care of yourselves out there, stay alert, stay prepared, and remember that your security is your responsibility.